let us move on to the Houthis in Taiwan in Yemen, who have been disrupting international shipping, not to mention shipping to and from Israel. The simple question that I wish to ask, Jonathan, of you is, why does the United States, which is the premier superpower, which possesses the largest, most advanced, most lethal military, at least so we're led to believe, why does the United States simply not do away with these Houthis?
Okay. First of all, this coalition that they've put together has been renamed by analysts as the coalition of the unwilling, because basically nobody wanted to join it. Not even the Egyptians, whose economy is adversely affected by the redirection of merchant marine traffic away from the Suez Canal. Okay, but they don't want any part of it. Why? It's not just because it would be an unpopular thing in Egypt, because the Egyptians love Hamas by all polls and approve of what happened on October 7th. It's because Sisi himself doesn't, after Afghanistan, doesn't trust the Americans. The Egyptian president doesn't trust the Americans. He's afraid that they're going to cut and run and leave them hanging. Okay, the problem now is the following. There's a ship manned by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps naval establishment right in the Red Sea, which is a command, control, and surveillance ship. Its predecessor had been sabotaged by Israeli naval commandos and replaced by a much more capable ship. Now, I can't find why we just didn't sink the predecessor when we could have. But there again, there's a good example of wokeness. We just want to hurt them a little bit so they'll go away. Well, what happened? Well, they came back in with a better ship. If we really wanted to do something decisive to stop this interdiction of merchant traffic through the Bab el-Mandeb and through the Red Sea, then that ship, that Iranian ship, has to be sunk. Beyond that, those personnel...
Isn't that what navies are for? Yes. Doesn't the United States have the largest, most powerful blue water navy in the world?
It's slowly losing that title to the Chinese right now. But
as I understand it, the Chinese have many, many vessels, but in terms of a blue water navy, they're nowhere near the Americans.
In terms of the blue water navy, they're building right now. They're building as fast as they can, very capable ships. Well, they stole the blueprints on most of the U.S. Navy ships, and they're reproducing them right now at greater numbers than the United States could ever hope to build. But right now, there is the United States does not need any allies or assistance to take care of the Houthis at all. They don't need them.
You mean the United States does not need the New Zealand Navy to come and help it?
Or the Seychelles Navy, which is, I think, 5 people. 5. I don't know what they do, but or maybe they're cooks. I have no idea. But what they need, they have right now, right there, just by themselves, to sink the Iranian surveillance command control ship and to interdict the land-based rocket and cruise missile, anti-ship cruise missile and drone facilities. They're known. We know where the U.S. knows where they are. And the problem in both cases is the fact that the ship and these land-based facilities are manned with Iranians. And the United States doesn't want to do anything that will get them involved, embroiled, if you will, with a war at any level with Iran. Now, part of
this is precisely the question. Why not?
On the one hand, the United States has this fixation with what's called the Indo-Pacific. Basically, concern about China and their threat to Southeast Asia and more specifically to Taiwan. And so everything is seen within the context of the Indo-Pacific. So if the United States gets into a war with Iran, which the US could basically win within, I think, 24 hours, that would basically be a rough estimate. It would somehow divert our attention and resources away from our principal concern, which is the Indo-Pacific geographically and China in particular. It's an excuse. It's not an explanation. There is that group, the retreads from the Obama administration. It really started with them, and now they're with the Biden administration.
This is essentially the third Obama administration.
Correct. Exactly. This is the third Obama administration. They, for some reason, still firmly believe, that Iran should be integrated into the Middle East as a legitimate, constructive partner. And the locals are saying, are you out of your mind? Everybody is saying this, except maybe Qatar. Are you out of your mind? These are the biggest sponsors of state terrorism in the world right now. But the Americans won't see this. So what is going to happen? Right now, you can't predict what will happen the next day, because the people that are calling the shots in Washington are so scared of the Iranians that I could just see the U.S. fleet just sailing away. I mean, that's how crazy it is right now. And this coalition of the unwilling just falling by the wayside. So if these attacks continue, at the very least, U.S. warships and the other coalition warships will accompany them. And given the fact that the Houthis may have a lot more missiles and drones than the navies, the various navies have interceptor missiles on board their ships, it's going to be a very tight situation. When a ship like an American missile destroyer, a DDG as it's called, expends 14 missiles out of its arsenal to knock down a bunch of drones. Well, each missile is $1.5 million to $2 million. And you're going to expend them on a missile that may cost $200,000 or less, or a drone that may cost much less, maybe between 50 and 100,000, if that. The economics don't work out. Plus, the missile armaments on board the ships are going to be depleted, so they're going to have to come off station and get resupplied somewhere. Okay, luckily there's Djibouti, which is a country right on the Bab el-Mandeb, and there's a resupply port, but they have to move in there, and that takes them off the line. It's very complicated. If you are going to convoy or provide anti-missile protection, anti-drone protection to the merchant ships going through, the problem is you just can't pick one spot and say, we're going to defend the ships there. Because the cruise missiles that the Houthis have, the Iranian cruise missiles and their drones, can go for 1,000 miles, some of them.
Again, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, the only defense against terrorism, which is what we're discussing, is offense.
Right. Now, here's an example of something. After the first Houthi attack on an Israeli-bound merchant ship, I sat down and I wrote up a suggestion to the Navy. Never got an actual response from them. They didn't like what I said. What did I say? We have the abilities, without the Americans, to take care of this problem. We have to start working right now, but within 2 weeks, we should be able to field a naval and air component, surface component and air component that will take the Houthis off the map. Unless anybody accuse me of this, it's with conventional munitions. And nobody wanted to hear it. Why? Well, just like our generals like to just get their fix from American military assistance, Their answer, I heard later, was the Americans will take care of this. We have had decades.
Like the Americans have taken care of the Iranians.
Right. We have had decades to prepare for such an eventuality. And the Navy has been treated like a redheaded stepchild, as they say. And the ships that we have are wholly inadequate for the task at hand. So I suggested a workaround that we could put into operation within about 3 weeks. Nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody. Let the Americans take care of it. Yeah, well, how is that going? How is that going right now? Not very well. Now, maybe things will change tomorrow. I don't know. Nobody seems to know. And that's the problem. If you knew with complete clarity that the Houthis were going to get hammered, that Iranian ship was going to get sunk, that the land-based cruise missile facilities and the drone launch sites were going to get hammered, and we were going to go after the Houthi administration in Sana'a. We were going to bomb the heck out of whatever military facilities they had. We would put them, I mean, they're in the Stone Age now, so whatever predated the Stone Age, maybe the dinosaur age or whatever it is, we're going to blow them back to that. And this could all be done in one day with just the aircraft on board one of the one aircraft carrier that's down there. Okay, the Houthis actually are not that irrational. You know, they'd bide their time, they'd stop it. But the problem right now is you can't guarantee the protection of ships over the course of transit they have to make through the Bab el-Mandeb, because the range of the Houthi missiles are so large and their drones are so large that there wouldn't be anybody left to guard the Bab el-Mandeb of this coalition of the unwilling. You'd have to send ships to accompany these merchant ships, probably all the way up to the Suez Canal. So the whole thing has been mismanaged once again by both the Americans and the Israelis. And I have to keep hammering the point. The threat for our southern sea lines of communication, they're called SLOCs, that's the acronym, sea lines of communication, has been known since 1956. Okay? It reared its head again in 1967. It reared its head again in 1973, and now once again. And in the meantime, in between 1973 and now, the Iranians slowly came back in and started harassing our ships, passing through the Bab el-Mandeb, the choke point. Who's responsible for that? Who? Well, our military leaders for sure, and the guy at the top who is basically paid to know these things. We should have had a prime minister, somebody who said to the Ministry of Defense, how are we going to protect our sea lines of communication through the Red Sea and through the Bab el-Mandeb into the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea, adjoining Arabian Sea? How are we going to do that? Tell me. And they wouldn't have been given an adequate answer. And they would have, a responsible prime minister at that point, or even a minister of defense, would have said, get back on the drawing board and give me a navy. Somebody asked me, where are we going to get the people for a navy? And my answer to that is kind of funny. My answer to that is, and I hope you're ready for this, the Haredim. Why? If you have a single gender...
The ultra-Orthodox, you say?
Yes, the ultra-Orthodox. Why? If you have a single gender ship, all male, which you can do, and you allow for religious instruction and practice on board the ship, you have like a small yeshiva, floating yeshiva. It's a naval Hester yeshiva, if you will, a military yeshiva. These men on board that ship could not only be paid a premium, but they would be trained in modern technology. They would be isolated from the opposite sex. They would be allowed, encouraged, permitted to continue their religious studies. And we would have the manpower at that point to field a larger, more capable Navy that's capable of what? Of power projection. I'm not talking about putting nuclear weapons on board a submarine. They can't be used here in this case. What I'm talking about is creating a Navy which, at least for the Bab el-Mandeb, for the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden and maybe the Arabian Sea adjoining, have enough power projection to take care of a tribal assortment of crazies like the Houthis. And since our naval base, I don't know if you know this, but I was horrified when I was in Eilat last year. I wanted to see the naval base. And I went, and what I saw absolutely horrified me. And I called all kinds of people after that. Get ready for this one. They cut the naval base in half so they could sell the land for real estate developers. We have such a small amount of land to begin with on the Red Sea, well, the Gulf of Aqaba. If anything, I would have thought, given the strategic threat that we were facing back then, that we knew about in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb, we should have expanded the naval base. But what did they do? They cut the naval base in half and sold it to land developers. I don't know where the money went. There's a question. Where did the money go? Who got the money? I don't know. Nobody that I've talked to seems to know who got it either. And so I looked at this, and I know already what's building up down there. And I have asked friends of mine in the Navy, how did this happen? And nobody knows. No, it's like magic. Nobody seems to know. Whoever authorized that base to sell half its land assets, should be court-martialed with a rising threat against a critical sea line of communication to the east, to Asia and India, South Asia, and to the Far East.
And
we should have been
even more critically with this current administration, as we said, a third Obama administration, with that woke agenda and mindset, they obviously will not deal with any of these problems at any point in the foreseeable future.
Not even marginally.